Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you so much for watching Once and Often. I'm Jasmine. Joining me today is a young mom, a beautiful mom, who at one point succumbed to the demons of society, but she is now here to share her story with us. And I thank you so much, Sarah. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Yeah.
I want to start off with this, and you
Mhm.
can let me know if this is any deviation from the truth.
Okay.
But you are a mom,
Mhm.
and your son saved your life.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, he
Because at
did.
one point in time you suffered from with the demons of society, as I like to say,
Yeah.
and you were heavy in addiction.
Yeah. Yeah. I started using pain pills back in 2008, and everybody in my town was using them, and I was kind of like a late bloomer, if you will. And once I tried pain pills, that was it. Like, it's just that quick. And fast forward to 2019 is when I went to prison. I was arrested at a Motel 6, and I tried lying to the cops and saying I'm so and so, and around the corner comes my probation officer that had been looking for me for 2 years, and she's like, "Sarah," she's like, "the gig is up." So she took me to jail. And because up until then, I had been given chance after chance after chance from various judges and my probation officer. Anyway, we get to the prison that night, and the intake nurse, after you have your shower and, everything, she calls me in and she said, "Is there any chance you could be pregnant?" Now, because I was so unhealthy and not taking care of myself, I hadn't had my period regularly. And there was even a point in time where I hadn't had it at all for probably about 5 years. And so I said no. And she said, "Well, you are." And I just slammed my head on her table. That's so dramatic, but I did. And I just bawled my eyes out. And she sent me into the next room where my bunkies were waiting. One of them was a pregnant girl, and the other girl was a mom. And these two strangers just held me, and I just cried. That's how I found out I was pregnant, just like that, just quick.
And you said that was 2019.
Yeah, yeah, April
How old were you?
26th. Yeah. Oh God, I was. Let's see, I just turned 36, so I had to be 30 or 31, I believe. Yes, I believe I was 31.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
so when we talk about your painkillers led
Yes.
to, let me make sure, because I think you said something like this in the post. It
Mhm.
was it heroin?
Yes. Heroin, fentanyl, crack, cocaine. Yeah.
All of that, right.
Mhm.
Is this something that you use all at once? I mean, and I'm asking in ignorance, like you just
Yeah.
go from one to the next.
Yeah. So it depends. Everybody's different. So when it was just the pain pills, it was just the pain pills. Like I never really did like I would use drugs socially with my friends, maybe like some Xanax and smoke pot and drink. Um, but with the pain pills, it was just the pain pills. And when the pain pills got too expensive and they were getting harder to find, I was sitting at my friend's house, and he's like, "Well, you don't have to pay that much anymore." He's like, "I've got this right here." And it was a bag of heroin. Now, my mom was always very open with me, and she said, she was that, like, heroin is basically like the worst. Like, you don't ever want to get caught up in that. And I always said, "Well, I would never stick a needle in my arm. I'm scared of needles. Like, that's fine." Um, and so I said to RJ, "I would never stick a needle in my arm." I was like, "I don't want that." He said, "You don't have to." He's like, "You can just snort it just like you do your pain pills, and it's $10 as opposed to $30." So that was nerve-wracking, but, like, in the mind of an addict, it's like, well, that's more money for more drugs for me.
Yeah.
So, that was, like, the beginning of the end, but it took a long time to get to the end.
Yeah.
That was in July of 2012 that I was introduced to heroin.
And this all started from pain pills.
Yeah, so, like I had said before, everybody in my town was using them, and they were just these tiny little blue pills, and I always thought, like, "God, like, what is it about these tiny pills that has you guys so wrapped up and sick and whatever?" A childhood friend of mine and I, we're sitting watching South Park, and another childhood friend of ours came in and he said, "Hey, do you want to take a ride?" And I said, "Sure, I'll take a ride." And we went, and I didn't know he was picking up pills. When we got back, he was like, you want to try one? And I was like, "Sure." I mean, drugs are expensive, and I'm not one to turn down a good time. I was like, "Sure, I'll try one." And so he crushed it up for me, and I did it, snorted it, and I ended up laying in my friend's bed for 6 hours. And I just felt like I was in heaven.
Wow.
Like
So
the best you've ever felt times a million is what opiates make you feel like. Yeah.
that's something. I remember, so years ago, I have
Hmm.
two kids, and in between my pregnancies, I miscarried.
Oh, okay. I'm so
So
sorry.
when I miscarried, the doctors had given me, I think it was a Vicodin,
Hmm. Yep.
or it was another very, very strong painkiller, which
Hmm.
I said I wasn't going to take. And the reason
Yeah.
for that, though, is because prior to my father's passing,
Hmm.
they had him on these pills, Vicodin, and I can't remember what the other one is called. But in my mind, I was like, I'm not doing this because I know that this is addictive
Yeah.
and my pain is not nearly as much as what daddy went through.
Right.
So I was like, I'm not doing this. I don't want the pills. Forget it. So with you saying that this started from pain pills,
Hmm.
but it wasn't like you were in pain. It was just,
No.
let's have some fun.
Maybe emotional pain. I think that's what for a lot of people. Because again, as soon as I did it, it was like the most confident I've ever felt, the happiest, the most beautiful, the most any positive adjective you could think of. Like that's what it felt like. Made you feel like you felt on top of the world, untouchable, and I was just laying in a bed. Like, but I felt so good, so good.
What started from the pain pills
Mhm.
and it just led to so many other things. What I find funny is that so many people always say marijuana is the gateway drug,
Yeah.
but that wasn't the case with you.
I don't know because I had smoked a lot of pot. I go back and forth with this. I don't know if because I'll be honest, I personally don't know too many people or anyone that I can think of who never smoked pot but then ended up doing hard drugs. So I don't want to say it's a gateway drug because so many people I do know smoke pot and have never done anything else ever. So
Right.
yeah, I don't know if it's fair to say that. Um, but yeah, for me, what led me to the heroin and the fentanyl and the crack and the coke was people, places, and things, just circumstances that I found
So that
myself
was it.
in.
So a lot of times people always say, oh, they had a rough childhood. I was neglected. I was abandoned. I was this. I
Mhm.
was that. That's not a part of your story.
It is, but like my dad was an alcoholic who stopped seeing me when I was 8. I was um molested by my stepdad's father a couple times when I was about 11 or 12. Um, but those things never bothered me to the point where I felt like I couldn't. I don't know how to explain it. It never, like, I know so many women, or I'm sure even men, who are like traumatized by it. I was never that. It hurt, yeah, and it was scary or uncomfortable or embarrassing, but it never like stopped me in my tracks in my life. As far as life goes, life just went on with some emotional issues.
It's funny that you say that. A lot of times we suppress trauma and we
Mm,
don't realize that it's still there.
yeah,
So when you say you were molested by your stepfather's father, not even your
yeah,
stepfather, but your stepfather's father,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and did this last for years?
No, it happened a few, like 2 or 3 times. I wanna say twice. Twice too many. It was disgusting. It's gross because when I think back to it, I can still smell the mint gum on his breath and the black cherry, he smoked a pipe, and I could smell that smell, and it's funny how it just your memories are so strong, and they come back and bring you right back to that. So, yeah, but it was more of a feeling of gross and embarrassed, and why would he do that? We've been so like tight-knit family. Why would you do that? Um Scary.
When you say he molested you, did that only involve touching or was there any penetration?
So the second time it was just touching, and the first time he was trying to penetrate me with his finger, which was so painful because he had long fingernails. Ugh, but yeah, he was trying, and I ended up crying, and it was in the summertime, so I was staying up late and sleeping at their house, and I went to go wake my grandmother up, and he tried chasing after me, but then he stopped in the hallway, and I think he was scared what I was going to say. So I just told her, like, Grandma, I want to go to bed, and she was pissed. She didn't understand what had just happened. She had to get up for work at 4. Here it is, like midnight, and I'm waking her up just to tell her I want to go to sleep. She didn't get it. I don't blame her, but that's what happened.
Is he still living?
No.
No.
Mm-mm. No, he
So
passed away in 2019, I think.
were you happy?
Indifferent. Like, when I've tried to think about the trauma related to the sexual abuse or my dad, and I guess I always equate trauma to, like, maybe not being able to have sexual relationships or relationships at all, or maybe crying about it. But, like, when I think about it, it literally doesn't, I have no feelings about it. It's just what happened to me.
Yeah. So so many people who deal with sexual assault, molestation at an early age, they carry
Hmm.
that into adulthood. Sometimes
Yeah.
that's a part of the reason that they're homosexual or what have you.
Yeah.
But that is when I hear stories like this, I'm always intrigued in knowing what could a young girl who's probably not even developed, what
Hmm.
attraction would a elderly man have for his
Yeah.
granddaughter? It's so
Hmm.
unfortunate. I'm so sorry you went through that. It's terrible.
Thank you. Thank
So
you.
you then have this fun, right, in your
Mhm.
addiction,
Yeah.
and life just goes on. You find out you're pregnant, and then what
Hmm.
was your decision in that moment?
So there's a lot of things that happened in between. So it's kind of funny because when I started doing heroin, I was a pharmacy tech at a big pharmacy everybody knows, and so it's funny because at that time the drugs made me. I wasn't like at work nodding out. The drugs made me work really hard, and I always had a great day, and the customers were great, and so. But in 2014, I quit my job, and I ended up going out on the streets. And anyway, it's there's so much to tell, but I ended up on the streets prostituting, and then I was brought out to I live in Connecticut, so I was brought out to Hartford, and by a client, and it was a dream for me. It was a motel in Hartford, and it was just full of drug addicts, escorts slash drug addicts, pimps, and drug dealers. It was like heaven on earth. And the cops didn't really bother you because Hartford is a big city. They have other things to worry about, like guns and, like murder and stuff like
High
that. So,
crime.
like, they really didn't bother you there. They even had a police substation there, and they just didn't bother you. And so I found out that there was a website called Backpage. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but where you could literally sell yourself online, and from like the comfort of your own bed, and clients could come to you, to your hotel room, whatever hotel you're staying at. And I that's where, like, the cocaine, like the IV cocaine use, and the um solely seeking out fentanyl and smoking crack day and night came from, was when I ended up with all these people who were living the life I was. And you almost forget that real life is happening. That's what it felt like. Like we are the world. Like, this is the world. This is all that's happening. It's a strange thing to look back on.
Where was your mom, your family in this moment? Were you just estranged from them while you were living
So
the good life?
so I'm an only child, and me and my mom have always been really close. And And it's hard because when you tell people like that you were an addict, so many people will say, well, like, what about your mom? Like, how did your mom just let you do that? And it's like, I was an adult.
Yeah.
You hide things from your parents. Like, I didn't go home after I tried, oxys and was like, hey ma, guess what I just did? Like, you don't do that. And and then people think that, your parents should just know everything. Well, they should just know. It's not, life isn't like that. Like, and if you think it is, your kids are probably doing a lot that you don't know about. Like, I'm just saying.
Right. So your
And
mom didn't know you were an
not
adult.
at
She,
first.
yeah.
No. I mean, she knew that I partied with my friends. Like, I know this isn't going to sound good. My mom was always the type, like, if you girls want to smoke pot, do it here so I know you're safe. That's how my mom was. But she's a good mom. She was always hardworking. Um, we were just so close. So yeah, she was devastated. She lost her house. She lost her job because the depression was just so deep. The pain was so deep. She used to tell me that she would lay there at night, and she would just bury me in her mind over and over because she knew she would get the call one day that I was dead, and she was hoping it'd make it like easier maybe. But in this time, no, my mom was a mess, an absolute mess. But I would go sometimes. I think she said the longest I ever went was like 2 months without calling them. Which sounds like a long time, and it is. But there were girls, other escorts, who their parents had no idea they even left the state, and it had been years. So it's just your first priorities are not letting your parents know that you're safe when you're on drugs.
In her mind, she was preparing herself in a sense for what she would eventually thought she would expect.
Yes.
When you finally got clean and you guys had your moment, how did you feel knowing that this is what mom was going through?
Awful. So guilty. When I was on drugs and I would talk to my mom, and she would tell me, she would cry almost every time we spoke, and she would tell me like about, like losing the house and they have to move, and I'd feel so guilty. And in my addict brain, I would say if I could just get sober to make my mom proud, and then when she dies, like I'll just go back to doing drugs. Like that was my thought process. Because I never really made her proud. I dropped out of high school and had loser boyfriends and a whole mess, and then I ended up on drugs. And um yeah, so when I got sober, it was hard. I cried a lot. Even with my fiance, there was a lot of things I had done that I just couldn't forgive myself for, even though he told me like it's okay. It's okay. Um and yeah, it was hard.
You're not the first, you're not the
Oh,
last.
absolutely.
So, and I want to say that simply because a lot of times when you have a life like yours, you
Hmm.
can sit in that guilt, but it's
Oh yeah.
not the time to really sit in it. You are now doing the work. You're
Hmm.
in school, correct?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, you're in school, so you're now going back and you're making the necessary changes,
Yeah.
and you have your son to thank for this.
Yes.
What was that like? And I want to go back to that because you said you banged your head on the table, and I
Yeah.
can only imagine.
Yep.
I could
Yeah.
only imagine, like,
Hmm.
oh no, I can't be pregnant. I can't possibly be pregnant. What had to go through your mind? And I find out I'm pregnant while being booked to
Hmm.
go to jail.
Yeah. Yeah. I was in prison. Um, Shock. I was scared. I Yeah, those are probably the two main feelings at that point: shocked and scared. I wasn't scared of prison. I've always been able to like adapt really well no matter where I go. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but um and then like my first sober thoughts started coming that I had had in probably about 10 years, because I'm not able to do drugs. I'm in prison, and talking to there was the girl that I told you about that was pregnant. She was pregnant with her eighth child, and she has custody of none of them because of drugs. And it like opened my eyes and broke my heart for her kids. And she couldn't care less. I mean, she was just, her being pregnant was just another day. Um, for me, I did a lot of thinking, especially because I was having my first sober thoughts. Um, a lot of talking to other women. not that pregnant girl because I felt like I couldn't get anything useful from her probably. Um, and yeah, and talking to my family and my fiance. Yeah.
Did you know how far along in your pregnancy you were at that point?
No. But I assumed it wasn't too long. Because I wasn't having any nausea, no breast tenderness, like nothing. Nothing. And, when I got arrested, it was such a blessing because by the time I got to the OB in the prison, she said, "You're 8 weeks." So that was 2 weeks after I got in. So I would have been 6 weeks pregnant when I got there. Now, my pregnancy, how it ended up was I never had nausea. I never had swelling. I didn't even start to show until about 5 or 6 months. So if I hadn't been arrested when I would have not known I was pregnant until it was too late for my son, probably.
Mm.
Yeah. So, like,
So I want to make sure I say this correctly. So because
yeah.
I said your son saved your life, but at the same time, your incarceration was also
Oh,
a factor for your
absolutely.
life. Yeah.
When people talk about, like, oh, prison shouldn't exist, or like, prison, if it didn't exist, or if the judge had been lenient with me again, like, I don't know where we would be. I don't think my son would be here, and I would probably be using drugs or dead.
Yeah, I don't know why anyone would say prison shouldn't exist. I mean,
Yeah.
everyone doesn't deserve to do a hard, long-term
No,
bid or whatever, but
I
to not
agree.
exist, I don't know.
Yeah.
So now, when you speak of your incarceration,
Mm.
was that due to your prostitution, or what was the story behind why you were incarcerated?
So I was picked up on a violation of probation because I stopped going. So I actually found out after no, when in the car ride over to the prison, my probation officer told me someone called you in. Now, at working at the motel I was staying at, was a girl I went to school with who also used to get high and was sober. And I just kept thinking it was her. She worked there and I knew her, and I thought, well, maybe she just didn't want me to like jeopardize her job in some way because there's this drug addicted escort talking to her that knows her. I don't know. And that was my thought. Turns out it was my fiance who had called the cops and told them she has a warrant. This is where she is and she's going to die. And that's how they ended up coming to get me.
Okay, give me a second. You
Yeah.
said your fiance. I want to make sure I heard that correctly.
Yeah.
Your fiance was the one.
Yeah.
So, and because I was going to ask, how would your probation officer know you were there?
Right.
So your fiance made contact with the probation officer or whomever,
Yeah.
said she's here, she's on her way to death,
Yeah.
and they got there.
Hmm. And what's funny is my fiance told me he had called the our local police department one time and said she's gonna die. She's doing drugs at home. He wasn't my fiance at the time, and when he had called, like we weren't really together. Um, but like he would take care of me. Like I was still allowed to come home, and I would crash for like 2 days, and he would make me like a big pot of soup and like take care of me. Like he's a really great guy. Um, and that's where a lot of that guilt came from because I knew like how awful I was. But anyway, um so he had called the cops previously before a couple months prior and told them she's at home getting high, she's gonna die, you need to come get her on a Friday so she'll stay incarcerated over the weekend. And they never came for some reason, and it's so good they didn't, because look how things happened. Like, I found out I was pregnant when I finally did get picked up, and if I hadn't been picked up, then I wouldn't have known I was pregnant for a long time, I'm sure. And it just everything happened just in like I'm not really religious, but it almost sent like fate from God or like something. I don't know. It was just so strange. And not to get too off topic, it's not off topic, but April 26th, 2019 is the day I was arrested and I found out I was pregnant. And I kind of call it like the day that my life started over. But exactly 6 years to the day, April 26th, 2013, I almost died of an overdose on the side of a Target, um, in Connecticut. and I was found choking on my own vomit, and I spent like 4 days in the ICU. I had aspirated pneumonia. And so when I think about those 2 days, it's like one came so close to dying and the other one was the beginning of my new life. And so that date is like really important to me.
When you found out you were pregnant, did
Mhm.
you instinctively say, "All right, I can't do any that's it?" Was it, I
No.
mean, aside from the fact that you likely didn't have access to any drugs,
Mhm.
but was it, did you make it up in your mind like, "I have to be a mom"?
No. No, because my dad was an alcoholic and so many of my friends were raised by their grandparents because their parents were addicts. So that was something I didn't want to do. I didn't want my parents to raise my child, but I also didn't want to play Russian roulette with my child in my sobriety. That's not fair. He didn't ask to be here. So I struggled, and it wasn't a decision that came easy. It didn't come quick. Um, but it came, and when it did, that's when I knew like this is it. Like I'm done. And of course everybody was nervous. People kept telling my mom, "You're going to get stuck raising that baby. You know that, right?" And I don't blame them because that's oftentimes what happens.
But it was your fiance who called, and this is your
Hmm.
fiance today.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So he loved you. Were you able to see it at that time?
I took it for granted. I knew it and completely took it for granted. I knew John will always be there.
And my reason for asking is because someone else would be upset. How dare you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but you
Absolutely.
weren't.
No.
He helped you on the road to sobriety,
Mhm.
and the two of you are now together raising your son.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
I love stories like this, and the reason why is because we don't see the other side of Sarah. We
Right.
usually see Sarah as we know her from the streets. We see
Mhm.
Sarah in her addiction, and very few times do we see this side of Sarah where we can
Yeah.
say, "Oh my God, congratulations." And
Yeah.
so I want to say congratulations to you on your
Thank you.
sobriety, because I know
Thank you.
now with your son having his mom, you are paying off like your greatest debt to him.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, he is it sounds so corny, but like I call him my angel on earth. Like
Of
he
course.
really saved my life. Prison saved my life. My fiance saved my life. Um yeah, it just it's sometimes it doesn't feel real when I think about it. Like it feels like it was so long ago, but there's so many times it feels like it was just yesterday.
You mentioned that you overdosed. You
Yeah.
so you were close to dying on a few occasions.
Yes, I've overdosed 3 times. One time was April 26th in 2013 on fentanyl. The other 2 times is when I was using cocaine, but I was doing it IV. Um, and that was absolutely terrifying. I didn't know it at the time, but I was having a seizure. That was the overdose, and my heart was just racing. And I'll never forget the second time it happened. I was standing up but leaning over my bed, and I just was thinking of my mom, and I just was saying out loud, "Dear God, you can't let me die like this. You cannot let this happen to my mom." And I just said that over and over and over again, because from what I've heard, when people overdose on cocaine, it's that like your heart explodes, and it's just awful to lose your child in any way. But I just kept saying that you cannot let this happen. It can't be like this. And that was the last time I touched cocaine.
Wow. So, because, and I just want you to know, I'm very stupid when it comes to drug use. I
No,
promise you
you're
I
not
am. I don't
stupid.
know
You're not stupid.
anything about it. So you said it was an IV?
Yeah. So you can inject cocaine. You just mix it with water, just like you would heroin. You put a little thing of cotton in it, and you take your needle and you draw it up. And yeah, it's wild.
At this point in your addiction, you had gotten over the fear of needles.
Oh yeah, yeah. You get over that real quick when you're sick and your body is screaming from withdrawals. Needles are needle who. Don't
Yeah.
care.
So
Yeah.
I get it. So you pretty much just, you got to have it, however you got to have it. Give
Mhm.
it to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I like these conversations simply because it's never coming from a place of judgment, but
Mhm.
we live in ignorance. We really don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's funny to me to see how something can have you so out of your minds, and look at you today.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've had a lot of unfortunate things happen. Like I lost all my teeth. That was one of the hardest things I've ever gone through because people see your smile at first, and I had beautiful teeth. Obviously I'd rather be alive and have my son. But yeah, that was devastating. I've had a knife pulled on me. I've had a guy was taking off his sweater and a gun fell out of his pocket. Like I've had some really scary things happen, and what's hard about sometimes sharing your story is you get people who will say, "Yeah, but that's your fault. You put yourself in that situation." And I don't deny it for a second. It's just sharing a story. I wish more people understood that. It's just
Right.
sharing, you know?
You know what bothers me is the fact that if you don't share your story, you're shamed. If you do share your story, you're shamed. But I find it to be more powerful for you to share your story because
Yeah.
only no one can tell Sarah's story like Sarah.
No.
And it almost removes the power from everyone else because they can look at you and be like, "Oh my God, she's an ex junkie."
Hmm.
They'll create an entire narrative
Yep.
opposed to coming to you and you can just simply say, "Yeah, I had a terrible addiction. What
Yeah.
questions do you have?" It makes
Hmm.
it so much better to have that come from you because everyone
Yep.
else look at you, and I say it all the time, like a throwaway,
Yeah.
and not knowing that you were just young and wanted to have fun and be in the moment. And so, yeah, give me the pain pills, not
Yeah.
understanding that this was going to spiral
Right.
because you don't know,
Nope. No,
and we
for me,
see
it was
people.
just another fun night, one time thing, maybe do it, a couple times with my friends, like everything else. And that's all it took was one time. That's what else I want people to understand is, when you're judging an addict, think of how many people do just smoke pot or they try, maybe cocaine socially. A lot of people use cocaine socially, and that's fine. But imagine if that, and for some people, it is that social cocaine use after one time, it, that was it. You were stuck on it. Like, it's hard to explain to people who don't understand, who haven't experienced addiction or who don't come from addiction, like their parents or don't have a family member or a good friend. It's really hard. And I don't know if you've had that same experience, but some people are really ignorant to the facts.
When it comes to storytelling, that's what I enjoy about it because
Yeah.
I don't know that life. I don't know that
Yeah.
experience. I didn't have that upbringing, but that doesn't make me any better than you. I want to be clear on that because
Yeah.
somebody will say, "Oh, but you've never that doesn't make me better than anybody. I
No.
am no better than anyone I'm standing next to." And I try to
Mhm.
make that a point each and every time
Yeah.
because people will look at it like, "Oh my God, but you never," that means nothing. That means
Yeah.
nothing at all. You dealt with the things that you dealt with, not even knowing that it would spiral like this. And then,
Yeah.
to your point, even for people who use marijuana,
Mhm.
I know people who have used marijuana not realizing that this time it was the bad marijuana, and
Yes.
they spiraled, and it led to everything. Name it,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. So
Especially nowadays.
right, especially nowadays, when you look back now that you live in sobriety,
Hmm.
when you look back at the people who you got the drugs from, whether it was a friend or people off of the street, what do you think about them?
I have mixed feelings. I feel sorry for them. I feel angry at them. I feel hopeful for them. I had one of my dealers who had started going to school so he could get away from doing that, and he was going to be a truck driver. And unfortunately, his need to make money got in the way of school and he stopped going. But I do have a friend I'm still in touch with who was a user and a dealer, and he is sober now and a construction worker. So you have to be hopeful. I get it. Everybody wants to make quick, easy money. I understand. Um,
But
yeah, it's hard
what about them makes you feel sorry for them?
because it doesn't have to be like that. Like you can be 36 and go back to school. You can do anything you want to do. in my opinion, regardless of race, gender, if you want to do something, it's hard. It's going to be hard. Like going to school at 36 is hard. Um and but I'm doing it because I want to. I want it bad.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you do. And with you saying that, I'm not sure if anything is meant to be easy. You know,
Right. Yeah.
I'm just not
Yeah.
sure if anything is meant to be easy. When you go to purchase a car, you have to have the good
Yeah.
credit. You have to fill out the paperwork. You have to prove
Yeah.
employment. There's steps. No,
Yeah.
I don't think anything is really meant to be easy.
Yeah. You
You
don't
know,
appreciate,
so
in my opinion, you don't appreciate things as much when it's easy. That's why I see kids in my class, and I call them kids because I'm old enough to be their mom. And they they don't care about school. They'll say it. You can see it. Actions speak louder than words. And the mom in me is so disappointed in them and for them. And I'm just like, you don't want to be 36, but you can't tell young people. You can't tell people in general anything really. Um, but yeah, you have to want it for you.
yeah, you do have to want it for you. And I want to make this point. 36 is not old. You're still young. I'm 46 and I refuse to call myself old. I'm still young.
Thank you.
So,
I know. No, I know it's not old, but it feels like
I
when
know.
I think of so much time is wasted. I could be a nurse now.
Yeah,
Like, but I wasted my time.
right.
But on speaking of that real quick, people have asked me if you could turn back time and not waste all that time and not lose your teeth and not all these things, would you? When it comes to the teeth thing, there's a little part of me where like, man, maybe I would turn back time. But if I were to turn back time for any of these things, I wouldn't have my son. And people have said, yeah, but you'd probably have another kid you love just as much, but that's not my son. I have the son I have now, and that's the son I want. And so no, I would never change anything I've done because all of it led me to my son.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I agree 100%.
yeah.
And now you absolutely get to feel what love
Hmm.
really feels like. I mean, because when I became a mom, it's one thing. You love your mom, you love your dad, you love your siblings, but when you actually birth a child, that's a different type of love.
It's unconditional. Like, and I wrote in my paper recently, I told you I'd written a paper, and something I said in there towards the end was when I finally had my son, it was like all the happiness and all the good feelings I was looking for that first night back in 2008 or 2009 when I tried the painkillers and I felt all those good feelings. Like that's having my son topped that. Like that's that feeling I was looking for. I think maybe my whole life, I don't know. And when I had my son, I got it. That unconditional love for me.
Yeah, there's no greater love.
Yeah.
There's no greater love than
Yeah.
for a mom and her child. And
Yeah.
I remember being in college, one of my college professors said the greatest relationship in the world is between a mother and her son.
Hmm.
And I see mom son relationships, and there might be some truth to that.
Hmm.
So now that you are an adult, now
Hmm.
that you are sober, when you see the kids, do you worry about them? Do you wonder that they will end up down that same road?
Yeah. I do. I even worry not just about the kids in my class, I worry about all kids just because I know how quick it can happen. And I know this is going to maybe come out wrong for some people. So, when I was doing pain pills, you could do pain pills and you knew what you were getting. Nowadays, we have so many kids dying because maybe they got some pot with fentanyl or they got the pressed pills, they call them, where they can make pills at home with a presser and they put the fentanyl in it and they'll say here's some Xanax or here's some oxys or whatever, and it's not, it's fentanyl, and it kills them and they die of a fentanyl poisoning. So those are the things I worry about too, is what you can't even smoke a little bit of pot now possibly without dying.
How do I want to say this? It's almost like you don't know what's real anymore.
Yeah.
You look at, let's say, the country Jamaica. It's legal over there.
Yep.
It's pure, it's clean,
Yep.
there's nothing, the cops aren't bothering them or
Mhm.
anything, but
Yep.
they know what they're getting. Anywhere
Yes.
else, you just don't know,
No.
and you
No.
take a chance, and
Every
you have no
time.
idea how this can change your life.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a drug dealer, and he had some of like the best stuff I've ever had. And he told me one time in the car that three of his customers had died recently of an overdose, and that it was in the news and everything, and he was scared. But I said, "How does that make you feel?" And he said, "I'm just glad they were able to get that high." And I was like, "How disconnected are you to say that?"
Okay, give me a
Yeah.
second.
Yeah.
His response was, I wanna make sure I heard you correctly. His response was, "I'm just glad they were able to get that high."
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a huge disconnection there.
Yes.
He wasn't even worried about his fate. He's
No.
just worried about giving them the highest high they've ever had.
And making money. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
But you want to know something, actually, going back to talking about my drug dealers, there is something that I think is plaguing drug dealers that is never spoken about. I've never heard anybody else mention it really. And that is that a lot of drug dealers are low key using their drugs. And I think that's what almost makes it even more sad a little bit, is because they didn't have to do that. I think curiosity got the best of them, and now they're stuck, you
Mm.
know? And they need to make money to survive, and how do you just they're just stuck in a whirlwind. Any addiction, you're stuck in a whirlwind, but I can't imagine having to sell drugs to provide for my family or my life or whatever, and then on top of it I'm also using those same drugs. It would just be, I don't know,
Biggie Smalls said, "Never get high off your
on
own
your own
supply."
supply.
I mean, I just, I don't know about it, but it just seemed like it was appropriate at the moment. I
Absolutely.
mean, they're using the same thing that they're selling.
Yeah.
Ah,
But they try to deny it. Like, I've seen it. They'll take like a little baggie with a straw, and they would like snort it, and then they try to hide it. And it's like, you're not fooling anybody, especially other addicts. And the for them to be around other addicts and to be embarrassed, to me, just kind of spoke volumes um about how they kind of maybe view addiction or maybe view drug addicts, which is okay. But they see
yeah,
the worst of it, so I almost don't blame them.
yeah.
Yeah.
I have to ask you this because a couple of months ago I spoke with Tila, the sober entrepreneur. She's on TikTok, but
Hmm.
she also dealt with addiction.
Yeah.
And I asked her, "Did you notice a difference in your high with each drug you use?" Really?
Yeah, so each drug is different, you know? I mean, the pain pills were one way, and even though fentanyl and heroin are also opiates, yeah, it was a bit different. Um I would say I was able to function more with the pain pills. Yeah, so and I've seen crack cocaine specifically really affect people in a negative way because it really messes with the mind. I knew a girl, I would just be sitting in her room and she would be smoking, and all of a sudden she's shutting the lights. The blinds got to come down. Everybody's got to stop talking cuz the cops are outside. Just, it's kind of sad to see, and especially when I think back, it's like that's somebody's daughter, that's somebody's mom.
Like you said, there's someone's daughter and someone's mother,
Yeah.
someone's sister, cousin,
Yes.
all of that.
Yep.
And you didn't wake up one morning and think, "Let's get this high going."
No.
No.
Mm-mm. No, I went to my friend's house with the thought that we're gonna sit and smoke weed and watch South Park. And in literally like the blink of an eye, my life changed like that. Oh, overnight.
Overnight. And
Yeah,
that's just how quick it happens.
that's just how quick it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I think about drug addicts,
Hmm.
because I grew up in the crack epidemic coming up in the 80s, we would
Yeah.
see, I don't even know if they used to have them like the little small capsules with the
Yeah.
red, blue, orange tops and things like that. And we would
Hmm.
see people walking down the street out of their minds completely.
Yeah.
We would continue jumping double dutch, jumping rope, and it was nothing. So it
Hmm.
became normal in a sense in our
Right.
society, even for us as kids.
Yeah.
And
That's
that's not
sad.
normal.
No, it's not. It's not. But yeah, I know our government has declared a long time ago a war on drugs, but they're losing. And I don't know
Right,
how to fix it, but
right.
they're
And I
losing.
wonder about that.
Yeah.
I wonder
Yeah.
about that. Sarah, before I let you go,
Yeah.
when your son is of age,
Mhm.
will you share your story with him? And how much
Yep.
of your story will you share?
Probably all of it. In steps. When
Right.
he's old enough. It might start with, "You saved my life. I love you so much. You did something so wonderful for me and I can't wait to share it with you one day." I might start with that. And then, as he gets older, my mom's always been super open and honest with me, and I've never, besides like the drugs, of course, never really hid anything from her as far as like, I'm starting to have sex. I need to get on birth control so I don't get pregnant, stuff like that. I've always been so comfortable with her. And I want my son and I to share that same, open communication. And yeah, I'm sure I'll
And I
tell
think
him everything.
I think it's wonderful that you do that. I don't know what led my birth mother to her drug use,
Yeah.
but I just know it happened.
Yeah.
But to know that you absolutely plan to share this part of your life with him, I think is
Hmm.
phenomenal. I think that
Yeah.
just makes you mom of the year just for
Thank
being
you.
able to understand the importance of
Hmm.
sharing this your backstory because it's not who you are now.
No.
And so for your son to understand life, behavior, drugs,
Yeah.
people, what better person can share this with him other
Yeah.
than his own mother?
Yeah. And I can't wait for him to be a teenager and try to pull one over on me. It's like, baby, there's nothing I haven't done. Nice try.
Right. Right, exactly.
I can't wait.
Exactly. That's I'm
He'll
sorry.
think I'm silly and I'm stupid and I don't know. Mom doesn't get it. Okay.
Right, right,
Mom doesn't get it.
right. Well,
Yeah.
listen, Sarah, congratulations to
Thank you
you.
so much.
I love this moment. I love moments
Thank
like this.
you.
I'm so thankful for the time you took
Thank
to
you.
share your story with me. With you being as transparent as you are, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate it.